Hi and welcome. My name is Robert Hangeveld. I'm here at Grenfell Campus, Memorial University, and we're in the sculpture studio of fine arts. I wanted to take some time to talk about all the different kind of clamping devices that are available, and there's quite a few, and each has their kind of advantages, and it's worthwhile kind of taking a while to just walk through some of the options available to you, particularly if you're in the market for buying some yourself. So I'm going to kind of just work my way across the table here, kind of have them lined up in kind of groupings in a sense. And the first group would be vice grips. And so this might also find itself in a demo on pliers and whatnot too, but a vice grip is adjustable in terms of the spacing between by the screw at the bottom. So as I unscrew the bottom, it will kind of have a larger profile there. And there's a little bit of a release lever here, so as you pinch down on something, you'll get a little bit of a pressure from the spring inside. It'll snap down and lock in place, and to release that, you press that and it pops open again. If it's too tight, you can loosen that kind of counterclockwise. If it's not tight enough, you can tighten that a little bit farther and clamp it down. So the same kind of vice grip technology is used in all these grips with this spring-loaded clamp, this screw in the bottom of that, and then a release here. This is one that has just been taken out of the welding studio. You can use it for different purposes, of course, but it just has that additional kind of C, which allows you to get in and around material as need be, and also has kind of pivoting feet on that. A larger variation of this is a sliding vice grip. This allows you to kind of get your way around much larger work, and it can be quite handy for that kind of thing. And this here has been taken off our drill press. You can use it for different purposes, of course, but this is a version of vice grip that is really meant to be mounted to a table. And so often a workspace might have a hole drilled through it, just as we have here. And you can kind of put that through the table, tighten the nut on the bottom, and just like with the other ones, loosen the screw as need be, and you clamp your material down to, say, the drill press table, or whatever reason you need to be clamping stuff. Last in the kind of vice grips is a chain grip, and that, of course, could be used to wrap around circular material and material that just doesn't really grip well with other sorts of grips. And just as with the rest, there's a screw clamp at the bottom. You adjust it as need be and clamp away. So the reason that these are kind of important is while you're, especially if you're working with power tools, skill saw, drill press, or hand drill, whatever it is, you don't want your material moving around. And so it is important to have clamps for those purposes, and the vice grips are particularly good for kind of clamping those things down. Also, in terms of glue layup and that kind of thing, clamps are important for that. So I have another kind of grouping of clamps here, and these are more kind of screw-based clamps, and so you have your kind of classic C-clamp, which is just screwed up to the thickness you need. You're kind of set within that depth, and that's your kind of classic C-clamp. This here is a clamp that's maybe not as common. You might find a little bit more wood shop and that kind of thing. And that's a hand screw clamp, or sometimes a hand screw wood clamp. And the difference of that is where a C-clamp maybe applies pressure to one spot, a clamp like this will kind of distribute the weight or the pressure through that whole area there. And so by screwing both screws together, it kind of comes together flat, and you can open that up as need be. The other advantage of this particular clamp is that you can kind of have it open up to a V or kind of the opposite of that for the odd time that you need that kind of shape. It's probably not something you'd be using all the time, but as you can see here, it can give you that sort of ability, which can be quite helpful. If you're putting together painting structures or frames and whatnot, having a kind of a right angle corner corner clamp is quite useful. And you can see here too, there's spots for putting nails through. So a tool like this can be quite helpful for that, and I'll come to another version of that in a minute. So really similar to all the other screw clamps, just it has kind of preset 90-degree angle on that. So next up we have the F clamp. You know, I guess given for the, sorry, probably like that for yourself. F clamp. One thing on the F clamps, which is kind of useful to kind of think about when using it, is making sure that the thread is all the way back down when you put it on. If you have it the opposite way, you slide it up, you have nowhere to tighten it. How these work is you have your material, you slide it up until it's kind of snug, and then you can kind of finish off tightening that, and it'll kind of support it through that. And again, if there's not enough to kind of pull it up with, you will not be able to kind of tighten it. So a variation on the F clamp there is a pole clamp. And so this can be mounted to any size pole. It does need to be threaded at the top, so you can thread on the one side. But once that's threaded, you can lift up this lever here, and it slides down the entire pole. And these can be really useful for, like these tables themselves are laminated wood, a bunch of kind of wood slabs kind of put together, and using a combination of pole clamps, every say 10 to 20 centimeters, allows you to kind of just evenly kind of press that. And because you can go at any length, you know, you could have this 10 feet in length, and it just gives you that ability to move at quite a distance. One thing too with these, if you are using this, it's often when you're using clamps, there's a tendency that there's a way it wants to kind of pull. A C clamp, the nice advantage of it is nice even. F clamps, they tend to want to kind of push out as well as pull clamps. So they are as helpful to clamp from the bottom side, clamp from the top, clamp from the bottom. You kind of alternate that to allow that kind of stability, and so it doesn't kind of all pop up. Sometimes it's not, if you need to be working on a surface, you can't do that, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. So more recently, there's been a lot of kind of variations on these clamps, the F clamp and whatnot, where they're spring loaded. Get a little less strength to that compared to the screw, just the kind of nature of that. But the advantage of this is that if you're holding something, you can kind of like clamp it up like that, and it grips quite quickly. And there's also a release which just allows you to slide it down. So these could be quite handy for that. Okay, we still have some more to go through here. Your classic spring clamp, which is not all that much different than your clothespin. Both handy, both kind of serving a purpose of just spring-loaded pressure. These, of course, come in many different shapes and sizes, and are quite useful for glue-ups and clipping a piece of paper to something, whatever you need to do with it. So moving right along, we have, so this again has been taken off our drill press here, but these also come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and that is a bench clamp, bench-mounted clamp. So this could be bolted down to, say, a drill press, to a table. Often these are kind of stand up and are much larger, and they are just kind of screwed in to clamp a piece of material in. So these again help stabilize something that you're working on, say you're filing something or whatnot. these can be very helpful for that. So moving on to, speaking of bench clamps, we have, now if you're set up in a situation where you have a table that has the kind of pole mounts in it, you can slide these sorts of clamps into your material. So you have a piece of wood here, you can slide that down and then crank that tight. This here has little slight grooves in it which kind of help hold it in the wood, and as soon as it kind of pushes back on that, you crank this down, it locks everything in place. This one here is just a beautiful object in itself. So much can be said about this piece, but it's a mini vise. It could be used for, I guess, jewelry or small little things like that. But aside from being just a beautiful object, it is also a 3/4 inch width, so you can kind of clamp it down into a table if you have a table like that. It also has these slotted screws, and so if you have screws there, you can kind of put it down, slide it in place, and then have something held there. So it's quite versatile. It's also very small, which in certain circumstances would be helpful, and others not so much. But a wonderful and interesting tool that I've never seen outside of this space. So we've got our kind of honorable mention section here. Actually, even beyond that, strap clamps are incredibly useful, and whether it's strapping something to a roof or holding together a picture frame. I'm going to kind of flip this out just to show you how this works. Now these are probably the in some ways are quite simple, but at the same time are take a bit of getting used to. So inside the ratcheting clamp, you have 2 spring-loaded levers. And it's going to probably be a bit difficult to see from that distance, but these levers lock against a ratcheting tooth here, and as it kind of slides down, which it's not going to do for me. There we go. It locks into place, and the one pulls it back, and it springs in, and it kind of allows you to tighten things up. To loosen that, you can pull these the spring-loaded things back, and then you can open that up. Often what I do is just put my foot down and hold the one thing in place, and then pull it up like that. And what it will do is open up the inside. You can slide the strap inside and out. So if I pull this right out, you can see that there's a small gap in between here. This the strap can be threaded through that hole. I usually want to do that from the back side, not from the inside. There we go. So once I have that strap through, I can wrap this around whatever form that I have. Maybe I'm strapping something down to this table, and then I can begin to ratchet that shut. The one thing with this is you want to have it loose enough that you have a couple rotations around as you ratchet it on, but you don't want to have it so loose that by the time you get close to the end of ratcheting, you've kind of filled up the spool so much that you can't actually finish ratcheting. So you want to have a little bit of slack, but not too much slack. I will clean that up later. If you use these at home, you can, however you want to do it. If you use them here, please do kind of wrap them up and clean them up. These can get very tangled fairly quickly. Typically, I kind of wrap them around like that, and then pivot around like that once or twice. Just kind of keeps things clean. Okay, so another strap clamp that is quite handy, especially if you're doing picture frames or canvas stretchers, whatnot, is this clamp here. It has kind of locked-in straps here, which allow you to, if you hold these in, allow you to stretch out and put your kind of corner brackets onto the corner of whatever you're trying to stick together. once you have that around your object, you can pull it tight against that, lock these in place, and then screw this to tighten that. And just as the F clamp, I was kind of suggesting backing this out all the way first before tightening things up. It's the same here, where you want to have this kind of screwed all the way up tight first. Pull it down, and then this here allows you to kind of give that additional tightening at the end. If it's kind of threaded all the other way, then you're not going to be able to do that. So I will clean this up after as well. So this one's so much fun, and more going to use in electronics or jewelry or small objects, but often called the third hand, which I imagine many of us wish we had. But this is very helpful for, say you want to hold two wires together to solder them together, or you're working on some very fine detailed things and you want to kind of have it held in a certain way. You can have these kind of additional alligator clip hands holding things in place, and it kind of gives you that additional assistance in holding things together. So just kind of going out the last few things here, we have a bungee cord. Of course, these come in many different shapes and sizes. You know, you wouldn't think of this as being a particularly dangerous object, but it certainly can be. If these spring out, they can kind of whip and hit you in the eye and cause a lot of damage. So do be careful with these, and not to kind of put so much pressure on it that something, especially with the old metal ones, the wire is kind of bent and all of a sudden it comes flying. Or even this here, where it's a kind of a plastic. The plastic breaks, also you got a sharp piece of plastic spring back at you. Very useful, but do be careful with them. Gravity is a wonderful grip. You can put a weight on something and it works much in the same way a lot of these things do. The reason I have the clay out as well is that using clay or other kind of material to soft materials to kind of hold things in place can be very helpful. If you're, say, working on stone carving, let's say, you could use like sandbags and things like that in a similar way, like soft form, to hold things in shape. Two other objects we have here are kind of things that we have. Elastic bands, of course, excellent for throwing around a mold. You don't necessarily have to have a clamp. Elastic bands work just fine. And wire, of course, can be wrapped around something, and you can also use pliers to twist that wire to kind of draw it in a bit tighter and hold things nice and tight. I thought I would end with plastic bag. Now, this one here actually has holes in it, so it would not work. But plastic bag could be an excellent form of grip and fastening. There are kind of industrial large-scale tables that actually have vacuum bags. They vacuum everything in and kind of holds things in place. This is really helpful if you're gluing up, say, a veneer, or especially if it's a contoured plywood veneer, and you want to have that kind of shape. Clamps and all these other things don't work so well. So what you can do there is have a bag and you stick a vacuum cleaner to it, or if it's a professional table, it's kind of all kind of built in. It vacuums everything together, and the vacuum stays on for if it's regular wood glue, maybe it's like 30 minutes, and that's enough to kind of solidify things. Just depends on the adhesives you're using. But a simple plastic bag could be really useful for that, and wouldn't necessarily kind of think of this as a clamping material, but it certainly can be. So there are many, many more clamps out there, but these are the ones that we have in the studio, and I think cover a fair kind of range in ways that things can be fastened and temporarily held together. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully this is kind of informative to you, and have